Picture the ambitious professional at the end of a demanding day. For hours, clients receive patience, preparation, eye contact, clear thinking, and measured words. Every question was answered with care. Every problem received disciplined attention. Then the front door opens. The phone is still glowing. The answers become shorter. The temper becomes thinner. The curiosity is gone. The body has arrived home, but the best of the person has already been distributed. Now ask the uncomfortable question. Which version does the household receive most often? Not once after an extraordinary deadline. Not during one unavoidable week. Most often, legitimate ambition is not the enemy, and a difficult workday is not evidence of neglect. Purpose may require sacrifice, concentration, and seasons of unusual demand. But listen carefully. A season must not quietly become a system. The people closest to you should not have to live indefinitely on the energy no one else wanted. This is why the calendar must become our first witness. Intentions tell us what we admire. Recurring allocations reveal what we are presently protecting. You may sincerely say, "My family matters most." But if work repeatedly receives your prime hours, your calmest attention, your emotional regulation, and your initiative, while home receives only physical proximity, then your order is contradicting your language. Presence is not proved by occupying the same room. You can sit beside someone and still be unavailable. You can hear words without offering attention. You can come home without truly returning. Do not use this truth to condemn yourself. Use it to examine yourself. The issue is not whether you have ever been tired, distracted, or pressured. The issue is whether depletion has become the normal offering placed before those entrusted to your closest care. Family presence is not leftover leisure. It is a stewardship responsibility expressed through recurring allocations of time, attention, and energy. So we are going to move from recognition to responsibility. We will conduct an honest audit, reorder priorities, establish workable boundaries, schedule restorative rest, and build repeatable patterns of connection. We will not demand the destruction of ambition. We will learn to govern ambition so purpose and presence can live in proper order. But first, allow the question to remain open. If your calendar could testify without your explanations, what would it say you protect, and who would it say receives what remains? To answer that, we must go beneath the schedule and define time, stewardship, presence, and leadership. The contradiction matters because we cannot correct what we have not defined. Vague words permit vague responsibility. We say, "I need more balance," but balance can mean almost anything. So write these 4 definitions into your thinking, because every boundary, every priority, and every act of repair will depend upon them. First, time is life made allocatable. When you spend money, you may earn more. When you spend an hour, that hour does not return. Therefore, to give time is to assign a non-returning portion of your life to a person, a task, or a purpose. This is why scheduling is never merely administrative. Whatever repeatedly receives your time is repeatedly receiving your life. The question is not only, what did I accomplish? The question is, to whom and to what did I give myself? Second, stewardship is the intentional governance of a limited trust toward its rightful purposes. Stewardship is not ownership, because a steward recognizes that what has been entrusted must be handled responsibly. It is not mere efficiency, because you can become highly efficient at serving one responsibility while abandoning 3 others. A full calendar may prove activity. It does not prove order. Stewardship asks whether your limited hours, attention, strength, and initiative are being governed according to all the responsibilities you have accepted. Third, presence is available attention expressed through responsive engagement. Notice both words, available and responsive. You are available when another person does not have to compete continually with an unseen audience for access to you. You are responsive when you listen, answer, notice, initiate, and adjust. Proximity can be passive. Presence participates. So do not ask only, was I there? Ask, could they reach me? Did I respond? Did I help carry the moment? Fourth, family leadership is accepting responsibility for the conditions that support connection, safety, shared direction, and repair. Leadership in a household is not control over other personalities. It is responsibility for what your conduct helps create. Do your patterns make honest conversation easier or harder? Do people know when connection will happen? When you fail, do you defend yourself, disappear, or begin repair? Leadership does not demand that everyone orbit your ambition. It governs ambition so the household can share a life. Now bring the definitions together. Order does not mean giving every responsibility equal hours. A sick child, a critical deadline, or a season of care may rightly require more. Order means refusing to let one legitimate responsibility consume every other legitimate trust. That is the principle. Time is life assigned. Stewardship governs the assignment. Presence gives attention within it. Leadership accepts responsibility for the relational conditions produced by it. Do not compare these definitions with your intentions. Hold them beside your previous 14 days. Let observable conduct answer whether this framework describes your present life or only the life you believe you value. Do not begin by designing a perfect week. A perfect week is usually an argument made by imagination against evidence. Begin with the week you actually lived. Take the previous 14 days, ordinary days, pressured days, interrupted days, and place the record before you. No excuses, no exaggeration. The purpose is not to accuse yourself. The purpose is to see clearly enough to govern responsibly. First, sort the recurring hours into 7 categories: paid work, commuting, household maintenance, sleep and renewal, screens, family proximity, and deliberate relational connection. Notice the distinction between the last two. Being near people is not necessarily engaging them. Record what happened without immediately calling it good or bad. A calendar cannot measure love. It cannot tell the whole meaning of a difficult season. But it can reveal which responsibilities repeatedly received first claim on your life. That is why time is useful as a stewardship lens, not because a schedule alone proves what caused the family outcome, but because recurring allocations expose patterns that intentions can conceal. Second, add the energy layer. Mark each commitment with one of 3 descriptions: prime attention, serviceable attention, or depleted attention. Prime attention means clear, prepared, patient, and engaged. Serviceable attention means capable but limited. Depleted attention means distracted, irritable, numb, or barely available. 2 hours are not always equal. One person may receive 30 focused minutes while another receives 3 hours of divided presence. Count the minutes, but also name what kind of person arrived inside them. Third, run the interruption test. Who is permitted to interrupt your work? Who is permitted to interrupt family time? When both responsibilities compete, which one routinely yields? An occasional emergency proves very little. A repeated direction reveals an unwritten rule. If messages, calls, and unfinished tasks regularly enter relational time, while relational needs are expected to wait outside work, then interruption rights have already established an order, even if you never consciously chose it. Fourth, run the initiation test. Who usually begins connection? Do you schedule the conversation, suggest the time together, ask the second question, and protect the appointment? Or do those closest to you repeatedly request access to whatever remains? Love that never initiates may still be sincere, but its sincerity is carrying too little responsibility. Now compare what you say matters with what these 4 tests show. Circle only the largest 1 or 2 discrepancies, not 10. You are not attempting total reconstruction today, and this audit must not become a ceremony of self-condemnation. Identify the patterns with the greatest relational consequence. Keep them visible. Later, they will determine your first protected boundary and your first repeatable connection ritual. But before rules are written, face what the record may represent to another person. Behind an entry may be a postponed conversation, an unanswered bid for attention, or an expectation that slowly stopped being voiced. A schedule can identify the discrepancy. It cannot grieve the cost. That requires honesty of another kind. Now interpret the discrepancies you circled as experiences, not merely scheduling errors. Guilt says I neglected a responsibility. Shame says I am incapable of becoming responsible. Those statements are not the same. Specific guilt can guide correction because it identifies conduct. Shame condemns the entire person and often produces hiding, defensiveness, or despair. You do not need self-punishment. You need truthful ownership. Name what may have been lost. Perhaps conversations were delayed until they no longer felt safe to begin. Perhaps bids for attention were missed. Perhaps promises were repeatedly displaced by urgent work. Perhaps someone learned that asking would only create tension, so the household adjusted by expecting less. Do not presume every relationship carries the same wound. Stress, anxiety, and burden may be present in one home. Another may be reaching for peace, rest, hope, guidance, or healing. Responsibility begins by discovering the actual experience, not inventing one. Ask the person affected, where has my absence or distraction made life heavier for you? Then protect the answer. Do not rebut it. Do not compare sacrifices. Do not immediately explain how demanding work has been. Explanation may provide context later, but context offered too quickly can become a shield against impact. Listen for what became harder, what became lonely, and what they stopped trusting you to notice. Then apologize with 3 movements. Name the pattern. Acknowledge its effect. Ask what repair would be meaningful. You might say, I have repeatedly allowed work to displace our time and divide my attention. I understand that this has left you carrying more and wondering whether I would truly be available. I am sorry. What would help me begin repairing this with you? That is accountability. Not controlling the response, but becoming answerable for the condition your conduct helped create. And listen carefully. Do not turn remorse into theater. An expensive gift cannot purchase dependability. A sudden vacation cannot correct an ordinary pattern by itself. A sweeping vow made under emotional pressure may relieve your discomfort while giving the other person another promise to fear losing. Repair is not proved by the size of the gesture. It is proved by repeated change. Grief becomes useful when it tells the truth about loss and then accepts responsibility for repair. Let sorrow produce humility, not paralysis. Agency, not performance. Carry what you hear into the household conversation ahead. The next question is not, how do I feel less guilty? It is, what governing order will keep the loudest demand from consuming every legitimate trust? The answer begins with 4 trusts. Write them into your thinking, because grief without order can recognize the damage, yet repeat the arrangement. First is purposeful contribution and necessary work. The labor through which you serve, create, provide, solve, and fulfill legitimate obligations. Work deserves honor. It simply does not deserve sovereignty. Second is marriage or your closest adult relationships. The people with whom trust, companionship, responsibility, and shared direction must be cultivated. These relationships cannot remain strong through sentiment alone. They require protected access and mutual care. Third is parenting, caregiving, and household formation. The daily responsibility of nurturing people, carrying practical burdens, shaping conditions, and helping a home become livable. Much of this work may be unseen, but invisibility does not make it secondary. Fourth is personal and shared renewal, the restoration of physical, emotional, mental, and relational capacity. Renewal is not an escape from responsibility. It prepares you to meet responsibility without offering everyone a permanently diminished self. Now notice, these trusts may overlap. Necessary work may support caregiving. Shared renewal may strengthen a closest relationship. Parenting may become purposeful contribution. Households also differ. Not every person carries every trust in the same form, but overlap must not become absorption. One category must not vanish merely because another is measurable, urgent, or publicly rewarded. Order means appropriate protection. It does not mean identical hours. It does not mean applying a rigid ranking while ignoring context. An illness may rearrange the week. Infant care may compress renewal. A deadline, travel obligation, or financial necessity may increase work for a period. That is not automatically disorder. The test is whether the exception is named, bounded, and governed. A surge season has a reason and an end point. A permanent exception has explanations but no conclusion. Therefore, establish minimum floors. Ask, even in a demanding period, what is the smallest faithful protection each trust must retain? The form may shrink. The duration may shorten. Expectations may be renegotiated. But closest relationships must not disappear. Caregiving must not be silently transferred. And renewal must not be postponed until collapse forces it. Here is the conduct test. If success in one trust repeatedly requires abandonment of another, the system is not ordered merely because the dominant work is meaningful. Purpose is not permission for one responsibility to consume all the rest. So identify the trust that currently has no protected minimum. Do not promise perfection. Name the gap. That gap will shape your first boundary, because values become governable only when they receive rules strong enough to enter the calendar. Now give the gap authority over your calendar. A boundary is a decision made before pressure arrives. It is not a punishment delivered after resentment has accumulated. It answers in advance. What will stop? When will it stop? And what conditions may rightly interrupt it? A value becomes credible when its rule still matters under pressure. Build 3 operating modes. First, the ordinary week pattern. This is the normal rule, not the ideal fantasy. Establish when work concludes, which family period is protected, and when work resumes. Then create a shutdown sequence. Record unfinished tasks so your mind does not have to keep carrying them. Communicate the next response window. Close the devices or workspace, and take a brief transition to settle your attention before entering shared time. You are teaching your body and your household that work has ended for now. Second, create a surge pattern. A surge requires 4 things: a legitimate reason, a visible expiration date, a reduced but protected family minimum, and a scheduled review. Do not say, "I will make it up later." Later is not a plan. State what will temporarily change, what will remain protected when the arrangement ends, and when you will examine its cost. Increased demand may reduce connection, but it must not erase dependability. Third, define a true emergency pattern. Write the escalation criteria before the alert comes. Which people may breach protected time? Which circumstances qualify immediate safety, serious health, critical operational failure, or another consequence that genuinely cannot wait? If everything can interrupt, nothing is protected. Every notification must not be permitted to borrow the language of emergency merely because someone wants a rapid answer. And be honest about cost. Some opportunities will need to be declined. Others must be delayed, delegated, renegotiated, or pursued in another season. A boundary that never affects a decision is only a preference. You cannot protect every possibility and still protect every trust. Reality will sometimes break the rule. When that happens, use a repair protocol. Acknowledge the breach without pretending it did not matter. Communicate promptly rather than leaving people uncertain. Restore the misconnection where possible by naming a specific new time. If breaches recur, adjust the system, because repeated failure is no longer an exception. It is evidence that the rule is too vague, too weak, or unsupported. These practices will not remove illness, deadlines, financial pressure, or human limitation, but they can reduce avoidable stress and hidden burden. They can make room for greater peace, rest, hope, and guidance, because people know what to expect and how disruption will be handled. Choose the first boundary suggested by your audit, but hold it provisionally. You share a life, therefore, you must not finalize its rules alone. The next step is to invite the household to help determine what protection, flexibility, and repair should actually look like. Bring the provisional boundary to the household as an unfinished proposal. Do not arrive with a completed plan and expect everyone to admire your leadership. A private decision cannot fully repair a pattern whose consequences have been shared. Family stewardship becomes credible when the people living under the schedule help shape what the schedule protects. Call a short priority conversation. Then ask 4 questions. First, what matters most to us in this season? Second, where do you feel forgotten or overloaded? Third, which work or care obligations are genuinely non-optional? Fourth, what recurring connection would matter most to you? Listen to the answers before defending the proposal. The first question reveals meaning. The second reveals cost. The third reveals constraints. The fourth reveals the connection people are actually asking to receive. Give every affected person an appropriate voice. Children, dependents, and relatives may identify what helps them feel secure, included, or remembered. But listen carefully. Participation is not the transfer of adult burden. Do not ask a child to resolve financial pressure, manage conflict, or carry responsibility for the final decision. Voice gives dignity. Leadership retains responsibility. Now place the shared realities on one visible calendar. Major work demands, unpaid care, household duties, recovery needs, and protected connection. What remains invisible is easily treated as available. Once the responsibilities appear together, you may discover that one person has been carrying tasks everyone else assumed simply happened. You may also discover that two legitimate needs occupy the same hour. That is not failure. That is planning information. Refine the boundary together. What exactly is protected? What flexibility is necessary? What qualifies as a legitimate interruption? If the agreement is breached, how will communication and repair occur? The goal is not instant unanimity. The goal is a credible agreement everyone can understand, practice, and revisit. Choose one brief weekly review. Ask only 3 questions. What should we keep? What should we change? What must we protect next week? This keeps the plan responsive without reopening the entire household order every 7 days. And do not copy an idealized home. Shift work, solo caregiving, co-parenting, travel, illness, and long-distance relationships require different forms. Design minimum viable connection, the smallest repeatable pattern that remains meaningful and dependable under your actual conditions. Limited time does not eliminate stewardship. It makes clarity more important. You cannot lead a shared life responsibly while treating everyone else's experience as a scheduling detail. Partnership does not weaken leadership. It makes leadership answerable to reality. Let the household's answer about recurring connection determine the first ritual. Then the next question becomes decisive. When that protected moment arrives, will your attention arrive with it? Use the household's chosen priority to build the ritual. Do not begin with what looks impressive. Begin with what can become dependable. Compensation attempts to answer accumulated absence with intensity. A ritual answers absence with return. Compensation says, look how much I did this time. A rhythm says, you can reasonably expect me again. First, choose one daily point of reconnection. It may be an undistracted arrival, a shared meal window, a bedtime conversation, a walk, a call during travel, or a focused caregiving check-in. The form belongs to your household. The principle does not change. Give someone a recurring moment in which access to you is clear, protected, and meaningful. Then govern your attention with 5 movements. Arrive fully. Ask an open question. Listen without performing another task. Reflect what you heard so the person knows you understood. Then respond before rushing to fix. Notice that sequence. Presence does not begin with advice. It begins with reception. If your hands are present but your mind remains elsewhere, the calendar kept the appointment while you did not. Second, establish one weekly block with mutual meaning. It may serve a spouse, a child, a relative, or the household together. Choose reliability over spectacle and shared value over expense. The purpose is not to manufacture a perfect experience. The purpose is to create a pattern that says, this relationship receives deliberate attention, not merely whatever survives the week. Third, schedule a monthly or seasonal conversation. Review the coming demands, the emotional load being carried, approaching work surges, changing care needs, and whether the present rituals still fit. A good rhythm is stable enough to build trust and flexible enough to remain honest. Marriage may require protected conversation. Parenting may require individual attention. Caregiving may require a calm check-in and practical relief. Travel may require a reliable call across distance. Separated households may require coordinated, predictable contact. The form changes. The responsibility to return remains. And when the ritual is missed, and sometimes it will be repaired quickly, communicate before silence becomes uncertainty. Name what happened without hiding behind explanation. Reschedule with a specific day and time. Then keep the replacement. If the same ritual is repeatedly missed, stop calling every breach exceptional. Repetition may be revealing a structural problem in the boundary, workload, timing, or expectation. Do not turn loved ones into performance measurements. You are not collecting completed rituals to prove that you manage family well. Rituals serve responsiveness, not appearance. Ask the conduct question. Can the people closest to me reasonably anticipate when I will return? And do they encounter real attention when I do? Now write the daily ritual, the weekly block, and the review point you will practice. Keep them modest. Keep them meaningful. Keep returning. Trust is served by presence people can expect, not rare moments they must wait to receive. But now face the next question honestly. If exhaustion enters every protected moment with you, what kind of renewal will make sustained attention possible? Then test the ritual against your actual capacity. A protected hour cannot produce attentive presence if you arrive with no strength to listen, respond, or care. Write this definition down. Rest is intentional renewal that restores your capacity for responsible engagement. Rest is not merely collapsing after every demand has been satisfied, because demands are rarely finished. If rest must wait until nothing remains to be done, rest will never receive permission. Some ambitious people wear exhaustion as evidence of devotion. Look how much I carry. Look how little I require. But listen carefully. Depletion is not automatically faithfulness. If others repeatedly absorb your irritability, silence, impatience, or disengagement, then your exhaustion is affecting more than you. If exhaustion is all you bring home, rest is no longer private. Its absence has become relational. Now conduct a renewal audit. Ask 2 questions. What genuinely restores my ability to be present? What merely postpones discomfort while extending distraction? The activities may look similar from the outside. One leaves you clearer, steadier, and more available. The other consumes time yet returns you restless, numb, or still divided. Do not call every escape renewal. Judge the practice by the capacity it restores. Protect renewal on the calendar according to your real needs and responsibilities. It may include sufficient opportunity for sleep, quiet, recreation, spiritual reflection if that is meaningful to you, or unhurried relational space. There is no universal formula. The conduct test is simple. Does this practice help you return with greater patience, attention, and strength? But renewal must also be governed together. A partner's rest must not be purchased with another person's unseen labor. A caregiver's relief must not depend upon someone else silently absorbing every remaining task. Negotiate it. Name who carries what when relief occurs, and how both personal and shared renewal will be protected. Rest that creates resentment elsewhere has not yet been responsibly designed. And face this honestly. Some loads cannot be repaired by rearranging an hour. The present system may exceed the capacity available. Responsibility may require requesting help, reducing commitments, redistributing labor, or admitting that something must stop. This will not make every burden easy. It can, however, create room for peace, rest, hope, and wiser guidance without pretending relief is effortless. Choose one realistic renewal block for the coming 7 days. Give it a time and purpose. Let it support the connection ritual you have already chosen. You are not resting to withdraw from responsibility. You are renewing your capacity to return. And when allocation, boundaries, connection, and renewal repeat together, they begin teaching the household what life here can be expected to feel like. A single corrected week can interrupt a pattern, but it cannot establish a culture. Culture is what repetition makes normal. It is what receives preparation, what may be interrupted, whose needs remain visible, and what happens after failure. In other words, a household learns its real operating values through recurring conduct. Your spoken values may be sincere, but the people closest to you experience what your practices communicate. They learn whether ambition has limits, whether availability can be trusted, whether renewal is permitted, and whether relationships receive deliberate care. Over time, those expectations shape how people ask for help, offer attention, handle pressure, and understand responsibility. Legacy is not carried only through dramatic decisions. It is carried through what others repeatedly experience beside you. Return, then, to the calendar that began this examination. If it could teach a lesson, what lesson would its present pattern teach? That meaningful work deserves every interruption, while relationships must remain flexible. That rest is delayed until collapse. That those closest to you receive access only after every public demand is satisfied. Or does the calendar now begin to teach that purpose can be honored without making presence accidental? Turn the new order into a 90-day family presence covenant. Keep it clear enough to practice and specific enough to review. Include 4 elements. 1. Protected boundary governing work. 1 daily or weekly connection ritual. 1 renewal practice that restores responsible engagement. And 1 review rhythm through which the household can evaluate the arrangement together. Do not create 20 rules. Build 4 dependable agreements that support one another. But do not freeze the covenant as though life will remain unchanged. Jobs shift, school schedules change, health needs emerge, care responsibilities increase or lessen, household capacity rises and falls. Sustainability is not stubbornly preserving one form. It is faithfully preserving the purpose through necessary adaptation. Review the covenant seasonally. Ask what remains effective, what has become unrealistic, and what must now be protected differently. There will be rupture. A mispractice is not proof that the whole effort has failed. It is a cue for prompt communication, honest repair, and a definite return. But repeated breaches cannot be excused as ordinary imperfection. They require redesign, stronger support, reduced demand, or a more truthful decision about priority. Normalize repair, never normalize neglect. You cannot reschedule the past. You can grieve it, learn from it, and repair what remains repairable. Then you can govern the next available allocation differently. That is where culture begins to change. Not in flawless performance, but in responsible presence becoming normal, reviewable, and repairable. The 90-day pattern does not begin someday. Its first evidence must appear in the next 7 days. Now take out your calendar. Understanding is incomplete until responsibility becomes observable. Write the clearest contradiction your audit revealed. One sentence, no defense, no exaggeration. Perhaps work received protected concentration while a close relationship received repeated interruption. Name the discrepancy exactly as your conduct displayed it. Next, choose the neglected trust that discrepancy exposed. Give it one boundary with 3 modes. Write the ordinary rule, when work stops and what time becomes protected. Write the surge rule, what minimum remains when the surge expires and when you will review it. Write the emergency rule, what may interrupt and who may make that call. If the rule cannot guide you under pressure, it is not yet a boundary. Now schedule the first occurrence of the connection ritual your household helped identify. Put it within the next 7 days. Give it a day, a time, and a duration. Do not write more time together. That is a desire, not an appointment. Write the repeatable act. Then schedule one renewal block that will help you arrive attentive rather than depleted. State its purpose. Confirm that someone else is not being forced to carry an unfair burden so you can recover. Responsible rest restores capacity without concealing transferred labor. Schedule the household priority conversation. Prepare this question. Where has my absence or distraction made life heavier for you? Your assignment is to listen, not litigate. Then write one repair sentence for a recent breach. Name what you did, acknowledge the effect, and state the specific corrective action. Identify the person who needs to hear it. Deliver it within 7 days. Now say this in the first person. I will govern my time as a limited trust. I will honor legitimate work without allowing it to dominate every responsibility. I will protect access for those closest to me. I will receive correction without hiding behind intention. When I fail, I will communicate, repair, and return. I will renew my capacity without transferring hidden cost. I will review these commitments with my household, adapt them honestly, and begin now. That is how conviction enters life. With a date, a boundary, a conversation, and an act repeated long enough to become dependable. The next time you come home, you do not have to bring only what the day left behind. You can cross that threshold having preserved something deliberate, attention ready to be given, presence ready to arrive.